Welcome to Healthcare Legally Speaking, episode 2. I'm here with
Michael Gennett.
Michael. Tell us, what do you do?
I'm a healthcare attorney, not a famous one like you, but I'm a partner in the Miami office of Polsinelli.
So we are here in the beautiful Miami office. Hopefully our audience members can listen to us as opposed to looking at the beautiful boat passing by behind us.
This is what we do best, talking healthcare in front of the ocean.
I love it. I love it. As you know, I'm from the New York office. What is your experience working here in Miami?
Miami's a great place to work. There's a lot going on here, a lot of healthcare going on here. We get a lot of nice people from New York like you coming down. It's a great place to work.
That's awesome. I love coming down here, as you know, here as much as humanly possible, especially when the kids are off from school, and I'm glad that there's awesome space here for me. You know, a lot of folks since, I guess, the end of 2020, 2021 started coming down here. Talk to me about the impact that's had, I guess, on law or your practice.
The impact on my practice, it becomes more diverse. There's different kinds of things happening. A lot of businesses are moving just towards cash only and wellness and aesthetics and injections, that sort of thing. I'm sure that's what you're seeing, probably stuff like that.
Absolutely. We're seeing a sort of a exodus from the New York market. A lot of folks coming here to operate. With the influx of the folks, what are the trends that you're seeing?
The big trend in the last 10 to 15 years has been the new Medicare Advantage clinics. And these are not just medical practices. They are big medical centers that serve Medicare Advantage patients. And for those of you who don't know, Medicare Advantage it's an alternative to being on regular Medicare. These are plans, insurance plans that get a per member payment per month to take care of all of their population's healthcare.
Would you say this is like the home healthcare agencies? Like we have a home healthcare agency model in New York where, you know, the agency sends nursing staff and skilled nursing folks to the patient's home. Is this kind of like part of that?
It's like that. You have your medical center, but then the same entity will own a home health agency. They'll own a physical therapy group. They'll own different healthcare providers, except for a hospital. A hospital is usually not part of it, as you know. And so the big attraction for Medicare Advantage, and you see these commercials on TV, is that they are able to offer not just your regular benefits, but also all kinds of ancillary freebies that people like. And just looking off of a list that I did for a client the other day, this can include gym memberships, health education, meals, over-the-counter items, personal emergency response systems like monitoring at home and so forth, transportation. And so most of these systems, you see their vans on the road every day, driving around, picking people up. And it's an attractive model for older people. And that's what we have down here. And I say that because that's not everywhere.
Right.
This is South Florida. Once you get up above Palm Beach County, the rest of the state, that's not a big deal. It's down here.
I guess, how does that comport with sort of anti-kickback, right? Because we know that you can't give anything of value to attract patients to your business or practice or,
right.
You know, so it sounds like lovely gifts that I would love to have. But how does that kind of work with anti-kickback?
Well, you're right. So normally giving patients freebies is a no-no. In fact, it's a crime. But as I said, with these Medicare Advantage plans, they get paid X dollars per patient per month to take care of them. And so the federal government doesn't really care so much what else they do, as you know, because they're only going to get this payment. So for managers and people, smart people that are running these, the objective is to be able to offer lots of these things, but still be within your budget. So generally speaking, the government is not concerned. It doesn't charge people with crimes if they're providing freebies in this situation.
Okay. That's good to know. You mentioned another thing, that sort of clinics are having these ancillary businesses in terms of referring them to the home health aides and things of that nature. Is there any Stark Law implications? If you want to, you know, go over a little bit of Stark Law, just for anyone that might not be a legal professional.
Well, the Stark Law is a federal law that basically prohibits physicians from referring patients to some other kind of healthcare provider that the physician has some kind of ownership or business interest in. And so that's the no-no, still is. But the big exception in the case of Medicare Advantage clinics is if it's all just for this clinic's own patients and it's under common ownership, then they're allowed to do it because they're not making money necessarily off of these referrals.
Got it. Because it's the same kind of flat fee that's accumulated.
Right.
Connected to.
Connected to.
Okay.
I knew you'd get it. Right. So it's very kind of hands off in this environment because the usual concern that the government has is that you're going to be running up the tab on the government's dime. But within this kind of arrangement, that's not a concern. And so there's a lot more wiggle room.
So that actually leads to another important point that you mentioned, right? You have clinics owning home healthcare agencies. So in New York, there's a big limitation on corporate practice of medicine, right? Like the limitation is who can actually own this type of business. And then there's something called the certificate of need where it's not a medical professional, like a physical therapy practice. So I think let's break that up and like first tell me a little bit about corporate practice of medicine as it relates to Florida or, if it's different, I can imagine it is, but if it's different in south of West Palm Beach.
It's not different south of Palm Beach. That's a state thing, as you know. And so the prohibition on the corporate practice of medicine just generally is some states don't want healthcare businesses being owned by non-physicians. And some states don't have a problem with that under certain circumstances. Florida is one that surprisingly doesn't because we're usually the overregulated state. In this state, anyone can own a healthcare business if you get a license that allows you to do it. And you still have to have a medical director to make sure that your billings are appropriate, that the people that you are employing are licensed and that sort of thing. So there's still a physician involved in it, but lay people are not prohibited from it.
Oh, wow.
I know that's way different than the Northeast where you're from.
Very different than the Northeast. Can you give some examples of the type of medical business? Is it like anything, urgent care, physical therapy, dental?
Okay. So it's anything that's not licensed as a hospital, as a surgery center, a pharmacy, but it's providing some kind of health service and charging insurance. It doesn't apply if it's a cash only business for whatever reason. So a business that's providing therapy services, physical therapy services, and they're billing insurance, it can be owned by a non-doctor, but they have to have this license. And the penalty if you don't have the license is that anything that you bill, you got to pay back to the insurance companies.
Nobody wants to do that.
Nobody wants to do it. Can you believe?
I know. We want to keep out of the money that we earn. I guess another question to that, what's required to get these types of licenses?
Well, and part of the big problem is, and especially people who come here from other states, is a lot of times people don't know that they have to have this license. And, and we'll get people in here who have been up and running for a year and a half and they say, what clinic license? So it's a really bad surprise to have to lay on somebody. And that's why sometimes you don't know what you don't know.
That's right. That's right. So it's important to seek wise folks such as yourself.
Or you, better.
Well, down here it's you.
Yeah. So how does that work in New York?
So in New York, if you want to operate a physical therapy practice, you have to have a licensed physical therapist that opens a PC or a PLLC. If you want to have any kind of, for example, Article 28, which is a surgery center or kind of an urgent care, you need to get something called a certificate of need, where the New York State Department of Health looks at the area where you're planning to open, looks at specific studies, and it's a rigorous licensing process.
Still has to be owned by a professional or not?
So no, Article 32 is for drug rehab center and work with an agency called Oasis for surgery centers and kind of urgent care centers. It's under Article 28. Does not have to be, but you do need to hire licensed physicians for the supervisory role.
Right. That's a little bit like what I was saying too. You could be a layperson like you or I, but you're not going to be running the show.
Right. So I guess, is there a certificate of need for these types of businesses here?
Certificate of need, something that every state that I know of was using at one point. And as you said, it is certain kind of businesses, a hospital, namely, before going back to the 50s, before you could open one, you couldn't just open one. You had to go to the state and demonstrate that there was a need. Well, for this hospital, the idea being you, the state doesn't want hospitals and, other kinds of health facilities just popping up all next to each other and going out of business and so forth. So that certificate of need, Florida used to have it for all kinds of things. And now that's really started to go away. Every year, the list started like this, and now it's down to a very few types of providers. Still, if somebody comes to you and they want to create a certain kind of provider, one of the bells that needs to go off in your head is, oh, does this require a certificate of need? You don't want to just start building and hire a contractor and then you find that out. So that's Florida, but we're not the majority, I don't think.
No, definitely not. I was in Illinois in our Chicago office, and again, you sort of have these restrictions there as well. I guess you mentioned specific types of businesses still need a certificate of need. What are some examples of those?
Generally, things connected to a hospital, cardiac cath labs. If a hospital wants to build a new campus and it's a certain distance away from the existing campus, you need a certificate of need for that. And, there are other types, but as I said, that the list is really narrowed down to bigger facilities and not small, like home health and things that used to be on the list. Now they're not.
That's excellent. It's good to know. Again, going back to, I guess, population, Florida's increasing. What's the patient experience been like from what, your clients are kind of relaying, or personal experience?
Mostly from personal experience. And I don't know if this is becoming a national trend, but if you are a new patient or either a specialist, but especially primary care, you don't just walk in and see the doctor 3 days from when there's a problem. And that's a problem. My wife in December had some sort of problem with her primary care and needed to find a new one. She went to make an appointment with mine, and mine's nothing special. And the earliest appointment she could get is in April, which she has. But so there is an access problem here.
Do you think that's connected to sort of insurance and the way, like, who accepts particular insurances? Or do you think cash only primary care would be a little bit faster?
Cash is always faster, isn't it?
I would think so.
Yeah. I think that it's a shortage. And so of practitioners. And so this state is right now a good place to become licensed. I heard a statistic the other day. Well, this was in connection with new laws that are coming out of our state capital promoting nursing students and so forth, because the passage rate for nursing students getting their state license is last year at 39%.
Wow.
I think.
So low.
It's very low. A lot of the new legislation is aimed at making it, easier and less expensive to become a nurse, practitioner, therapist, etc. I don't know. Is that in the Northeast? You having that kind of access problem?
I personally haven't experienced it. There's a lot. I mean, I feel like I can throw a rock into the medical center. I don't know if that's a product of living in South Brooklyn or, just because there's, New York's still kind of considered the capital, right? New York City, specifically of like all business and transaction.
Well, hitting one with a rock and getting in to see a doctor aren't the same thing.
It's
So,
true.
I mean, is it easy to get in? Usually not too long after you have a problem.
So I've had problems with my knee. I playing basketball, which, probably stretched beforehand, but didn't. And then I fell on my knee because I'm clumsy. Had some meniscus issues. I called the doctor, a specialist, and within a week, it's no problem. I call my primary. It's like, yeah, no problem. Come in. Like, I'll see you tomorrow.
Come in and we'll operate on you.
It wasn't operate. We'll take a look.
Yeah. How's that basketball career now?
It's over. I've now picked up a racquetball career.
It's officially over.
It's officially over.
Pickleball actually is a very big thing. Talk about a trend, but I think that's a national trend.
I don't get it. Pickleball.
You don't get it because you don't understand it, or you've never heard of it?
I've heard of it. I've seen it. I don't understand like the fun of it. Maybe it's just because I haven't played it, but that's my
maybe because you're a really good tennis player. Pickleball is a very more scaled down for older people type of a.
Hopefully, I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
But I do. A lot of my friends that my age and younger are playing pickleball, and I'm just like, I still don't get it.
I think, and I know that this is not really what we were here to talk about, but I think part of it is because anybody can do it. You don't have to be, a tennis court is a big area to cover.
Well, racquetball for me is a lot of fun because again, you're still running around and you're still kind of burning those calories, which is
Right.
what I'm looking for. The only problem is getting pegged with the ball, which is so unpleasant.
I know. Yeah, in pickleball, I don't think you can swat your partner on the head with a racket as easily as in racquetballs.
Fair enough. Big ping pong player as well. So, big fan of that one, but don't really develop the same sweat as basketball or racquetball.
No, it's it's not as sexy of a sport, I guess.
But we've got a little bit of a tangent.
We've gone way over.
But that's okay. This is,
Yeah.
casual conversation. The other thing, Florida is becoming very diverse. So, for example, in my building where I live in Polsinelli Beach, I feel like I have to show my passport every time I walk through the front doors because it's such an international place.
Yeah.
How has that applied to sort of language requirements for medical-based businesses?
We have people here, obviously, from everywhere in the world. In my own neighborhood, you got people from the Caribbean, you got people from Asia, you got people from Eastern Europe. And so the state wants facilities and especially, hospitals and emergency care, these walk-in clinics and so forth to be able to accommodate these people. Depending on what type of facility you are, you may be required to have somebody that speaks Creole, and Spanish is almost a must. It is a must. The state wants certain types of facilities, mainly emergency facilities, to be able to accommodate this diverse population. One of the other accommodations that this is becoming important in Medicare and other ways too is transparency, price transparency. So if you are one of these walk-in clinics, for example, you are required to have a sign posted in your waiting room that shows your charges for the top 50 services that you provide. The charge that you would provide to somebody who doesn't have any insurance at all. And this is part of a national trend to make people aware of what their costs are going to be so that they don't get health care and all of a sudden they're under an avalanche of medical expenses.
Right. I guess going back to language, how does the state mandate one, where you have to provide those language services, two, which languages to provide?
I'll take the second question first. It's not everything, obviously. I think that the only ones that are fairly standard are Creole and Spanish.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because there's especially in Sunny Isles, Polsinelli Beach, large influx of Eastern European immigrants, a lot of Ukrainian refugees. So I'd imagine it's only a matter of time before Russians mandate.
It could be. You're right. In certain areas of the beach, that is the population. So I haven't seen that yet. It may be coming. We have your phone can speak every language at this point, but yeah, those are the ones. And when I was talking before about price transparency, you probably read bankruptcy statistics where a very high number of personal bankruptcy filings are directly related to medical debt.
Yeah.
So it's a huge national problem.
I having a hard time envisioning how it could be county by county, neighborhood by neighborhood, which languages are enforced, right? But listing pricing for the top procedures, I think that's a great idea, right? Because sometimes people have a deductible, right? And they can figure out maybe I should just pay cash for this or get faster service, or people that are concerned that, hey, I don't have insurance, I'm going to avoid going to the doctor. And then they see, okay, so maybe it's not that bad.
Well, that's a problem too. You raise a good point, which is sometimes people who should go to the emergency room don't go to the emergency room because let's face it, most of the time, and especially 5 years ago, when you walk out of the emergency room, you got no idea what bill is coming in the mail, right?
Exactly. And I personally experienced this because when my first kid was born, they sent us a crazy bill, but what I'm understanding is that it's what they bill the insurance, and they bill the insurance more than the actual cost because the insurance is going to cut down that payment. Right.
That's right.
Typically. So they just, whatever sticker price they put to the insurance, they put to the consumer. And then when you start talking to them, it's like, guys, this is not getting covered. Then kind of wiggle room for negotiation. I mean, I don't remember, maybe $10,000 bill that I was able to kind of negotiate down to like $1,000.
Right. But it aged you 10 years before you found out the truth. Probably.
Well, again, a little bit of experience in the space, so I knew kind of how to handle it. But I imagine for any consumer that walks through the door, it's definitely will aged.
Right, right. And it's, look, you have to have a healthcare system that can be navigated by people who, aren't very sophisticated or educated and know how it works. And so it's a good thing. I think that state and federal governments are working to make everything more accessible as it should be.
Agreed. And what most folks don't know is even prior to seeing a physician, you can talk to them in advance and say, look, I'm paying cash, and you can negotiate a price. Has that been your experience with clients?
I haven't seen that come up. That's something you've seen.
That's something I've seen, definitely something I've experienced before even becoming an attorney. But yeah, I mean, some folks, that's why I think there's a growth in cash only businesses for the
Right.
concierge service, especially in New York. Like you can go see a nutritionist that's a nurse practitioner that can provide certain fluids that can treat like, hormone replacement therapy and things like that, but it's cash based. So they're holistic and they're able to offer more service.
Gotcha. Nurse practitioners, another trend is that their licensing boards have made it so that they can do more and more things independent of a physician's supervision.
I can tell you that nurse practitioners and physician assistants
Yeah.
can now open their own PCs and PLCs, which is going back to the corporate practice of medicine.
Right.
So when you, as a patient, go to them, you know that they're an NP and that they're running the medical business
Right.
and they're able to do certain things. Of course, not everything a medical doctor can do, but there are certain things they can do. So there might not even be a doctor in the office.
Right. But, we now have if a nurse practitioner has, I think it's 5 years of experience, they can become wholly independent of physician's supervision. They can basically do anything that a physician can do short of surgery.
So, Mike, in terms of enforcement and government actions in the area, South Florida or in Florida in general, what are some of the trends you're seeing?
The healthcare fraud type of areas tend to change every 10 years. It used to be, I guess, in the 90s, DMEs, medical equipment companies, and pharmacies where there was billing going on. And when the Department of Justice would show up, the pharmacy was a PO box, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was a big problem in the 90s. Then in the big area, especially down here, but nationwide, was detox centers, right? That they were the focus of, and they were part of the the opioid crisis that the government was trying to deal with. Right now, the big areas there's still the cleanup from COVID, and when I say cleanup, I mean people who took out loans based on false information, reporting that they own a company with 500 employees. So getting the money. And then, another one is the testing itself. There was a period of time during COVID when any Medicare beneficiary could get, I think it's 8 COVID tests a month free. And so some of the cleanup from that now is showing either providers that sold the test to people who didn't ask for it. We've had some clients in that area, and then others that were providing the tests to patients, but the order was sort of like a kickback, an order that was purchased by some, fake ordering company. So that's big. And unfortunately, behavioral health providers, they get Medicaid, are something that's been the subject of a lot of enforcement, which is unfortunate because there's such a need for, behavioral health providers to begin with, and yet they somehow find themselves caught up in this wave of enforcement now. What's going on up there in the Northeast?
So early 90s was big. So Florida does or does not have a no-fault law.
They have for motor insurance?
Right.
It's no fault. Yeah.
Yeah. So in 90s, it was a lot of no-fault fraud.
The PIP clinics,
Yeah, with PIP.
protection. That's
Yeah.
what they call it down here.
Yeah. So it was we called the no-fault clinics or no-fault milk. There was a lot of kickbacks. There were runners running around. There were staged accidents. So those medical clinics, there was a lot of enforcement action with those. And so the insurance companies started fighting back by filing civil RICO claims against the medical-based businesses. So all the bad actors, a lot of the bad actors, I think, have been already removed out of business and, you know, had criminal penalties associated with them.
Right.
But now, funny enough, now even innocent pharmacies, medical businesses, durable medical equipment companies are lumped together to those civil RICO actions, and there's still regular actions filed today because the insurance companies, I feel, got a tool that, you get a hammer, you look for nails. You can find nails, you look for other things to bang with. So I feel there's civil RICO cases against kind of innocent medical business.
The good get swept up with the bad.
Right.
Usually.
That's what's happening now.
Yeah.
And in terms of investigations, again, there's investigations into kickbacks and fraudulent billing practices. And what I'm seeing a lot of is not an increase, but a steady flow of Medicare, Medicaid audits through the MAC, which is the contract entity that does the audit themselves.
Right.
And those entities are reimbursed with findings. And so when you're reimbursed with findings, you're going to find findings.
Right.
And that's sort of what medical businesses are facing there. Do you see a lot of billing audits down here?
There are still Medicaid ones, but we are with you on the no fault clinics because that's not necessarily government money fraud. It's private, insurance. The Aetnas and the State Farms of the world are the ones pursuing the PIP clinics. For example, each no fault policy has a limit, whatever it is, $10,000.
Sure.
But in order to exhaust the benefits, you have to get a diagnosis, at least down here, that you have an emergency medical condition. And so what the insurers are looking for are the clinics that everyone they see has an emergency medical condition. They always use data mining on all of these sorts of audits. They use data mining to find who are the people who are at the top of their peers, right? That's who we're going after.
Yeah. So the more money you have, unfortunately, in New York, there's a lot of money being flashed around by these providers. I mean, not like both, on here that look like cars.
Yeah. We did just see that, by the way.
Yeah. But, and those are the people that kind of pop up and get smacked down, for lack of a better term.
That's true. You would think that you're bilking somebody out of money. Maybe you want to keep it quiet, right? But they don't.
Right. I mean, yeah, but I guess that's what it is. The other topic I wanted to discuss is increased patient population, increased patient data. How has the provider landscape been handling that patient data and protecting it?
It's good and it's bad. There's good news and bad news. The good news is that since the patient confidentiality laws, which is HIPAA, but there's also state ones, came out in the 90s, healthcare providers of all sorts have finally sort of caught up with the whole privacy aspect of it and made sure that, they're not talking about your personal information in front of somebody else, the usual doctor's office visit kind of problems and the privacy aspect of it. What they haven't caught up with, at least in my experience, is the IT part of it. The electronic information. We all read the papers. We see that breaches and hacking is becoming worse, starting overseas in different kinds of countries, and healthcare providers and hospitals and insurance companies, they're target big time. It's not the 90s anymore, but providers haven't caught up with that part of it. I don't think, at least not most of the ones that I see. And I'm not talking about hospitals, your local pharmacy, your doctor. Most of them haven't bothered to have a technician come in and run an analysis of where their breaches can come from and what they need to do to stop it from happening. And that part they need to catch up with.
Yeah. And I think a large part of that is ensuring that your EMR system, your electronic medical record system, is up to date and following all the latest compliance laws, right? And
yeah.
They need to be inspected, right? Because most, again, smaller, mid-sized medical practice groups rely on these companies and say, yeah, we're HIPAA compliant, but without actually looking at what they do to protect that data.
Right. When HIPAA came out, the government was quick to say, look, this is not a one size fits all. we realize that a hospital is going to have more resources in this area than smaller businesses. So you have to adopt your approach within your size limit. But having said that, you still are in this day and age in 2024 have to bring in your IT professionals to really identify your areas of weakness. And there's been some reluctance to that.
Yeah, there was a situation, a case that years ago, a doctor was sending medical information over Gmail.
Right.
And Gmail, just as a function of being a free email provider, scans the contents of that email so they can advertise to you.
Right.
So we had a situation where somebody was being advertised to about, they were HIV positive, but they were being advertised to for different therapies for HIV when they were on the Gmail. And when they were at work, a lot of their coworkers didn't know that. And it was a sensitive job where kind of handling things where you need to disclose that and you take certain precautions
Right.
ahead of that. And as a result, the person was terminated, which to this day and age might have not happened that way. But then, the big breach. So my biggest comment to my clients is do not use Gmail for medical related things. Do not use Gmail or Hotmail or Yahoo or any of those. Get a secure email provider. They're not that expensive. You look more professional because you have, your domain name.
Yeah.
And that's been an issue that I've been seeing.
Also thought that expensive is encryption. Most Windows programs that, in my experience, come, with encryption. And again, some of these companies that are in the healthcare space don't realize all you have to do is hit that encryption button before you send an email with a patient's name and information. And that's got you.
Exactly. We use Mimecast. Very
Right.
simple to send a secure email, right? Just click secure.
Sure.
And then it's all set. But, a lot of practices don't know that those things exist, don't know that it's a problem until it becomes a problem.
Right.
So we've been trying to guide and counsel folks on sort of sending secure emails if you have to send something over email.
Sure. Well, Steve, we're not going to solve all the problems of the world, but it's good that we can sit here in this nice setting and watch the boats go by and, put them down on a list. We'll get to it. Our list.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so
Good to
much
see
for
you.
sitting down with me. I really appreciate it.
Until next time.
Until next time.
And there will be one.
There will be a next time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.